Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, depending on where you are in the world today. I wanted to welcome you all to the webinar today. My name is Chantel Aubry, and I am the Business Development Manager here at Emergence. I'm pleased to be your moderator today and to welcome you to our BlackLine webinar. Um, we have just a few housekeeping items that we would like to get through before we get started, if that's okay. And I do apologize for those who've already sort of attended some of our webinars before. It'll be a bit of a repeat in the beginning for you, but then we'll get into the fun stuff. So just to keep the order of the presentation moving along and on schedule, we've put the audience on mute today, but we still want this to be interactive. So please go ahead and type in your questions in the side panel, and we'll review and answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. Now, because a few of you are new to Emergence, who I see are in attendance today, I'm going to go through a really quick overview of who Emergence is as an organization. So Chris, if you just want to move that slide forward, great, thank you. We are a Bermuda-based organization, and we're a business solution provider. Our primary focus, and what we're probably known for the most, is the implementation and support of business platforms such as Dynamics GP and Dynamics CRM. But we also have a large focus on corporate performance management, corporate reporting, and business intelligence and business automation. We have a staff of 35 people, including solution architects, business analysts, accountants, and functional and technical consultants. We have people who've been with the organization for 10, 15, and even 20 years in some cases, but we also have a lot of new people as well. So Emergence has hired 8 people in the last year alone, and our recruitment efforts are still ongoing. So we're definitely in growth mode, which is always a really great place to be. We have over 150 clients here in Bermuda, many of which have offices overseas. So we support many of those offices as well. We have a balanced portfolio of financial services companies, distribution companies, and local and international businesses. And finally, we have access to a large network of trusted solution partners. Microsoft has a very large, what they call ecosystem of third-party vendors. So we spend a lot of time evaluating new partners to bring solutions that meet the requirements of our clients, both here in Bermuda and the overall Caribbean market in general. And that's exactly how we came to partner with BlackLine. We were looking for a solution for a more cost-effective or a more effective way of doing doing reconciliations and close automations and such. And so we're really excited to have BlackLine as part of a new solution that we're offering in our portfolio now. So with that being said, I'd like to now introduce you to our presenter today, Chris Gonzales. Chris is a solution consulting manager with BlackLine. He has over 15 years of experience working and overseeing teams in the areas of finance, internal audit, and accounting. He spent most of his career working in pharmaceutical industry, but has now ventured into software where he can leverage his collective years of experience. He received his undergraduate degree in finance from the University of Connecticut and his MBA from the Pennsylvania State University. So without any further delay, I'm going to hand it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chantel. So again, thank you for everyone for taking the time to meet with us here. My name is Chris Gonzales, and I'm currently employed by BlackLine, and I work in the solutions consulting team. And what I'm going to do here today is take you real quick through who BlackLine is, and then we'll jump on into the product, and I'll get you in there, and you can see how BlackLine can help you improve the overall automation and control within your individual accounting environments. So just a quick note on who BlackLine is. So we're one of the fastest growing software companies in the world, right? So we have, as the present time, over 2,600 clients with over 222,600 users. It's a lot to say there. So what that means is you have an immense BlackLine community that you can interact with on a day-to-day basis, because within the product, you have the ability to communicate out to them and find out what they're too doing from a best practice standpoint. So those 222,000 clients. Their user base in over 130 countries really provides a solid foundation for you to continue using the BlackLine offering so you can pull the most out of it. Now, so where do we help? Here on the screen, you see some of the areas where we help fill the void between your ERP and your financial reporting process. So the areas around the middle are the areas where the BlackLine offering looks to touch upon, right? We're going to help you out with automation. We're going to help you out with high volume analyses. We're going to help you with your balance substantiation, to name a few. And so each of these bubbles that you see around here correlate to an area within the BlackLine offering that we have available for you to leverage. Take, for example, account recs. We're going to go through that here today. Transaction matching, there on the far right. We're going to help you with automating the analysis of multiple data sources of transactions where you may compare them against one another to find those transactions that may match against one another and those that do not. We're also going to take a look upon our task management area here today. So how can we help you manage the day-to-day activities that need to occur within the close? Now, at a later date, you may want to explore some of the other areas that we haven't mentioned here, and we're happy to do that. Okay, so why don't we jump on into the product and take a look and see what that looks like? So what I'll do is bring up the BlackLine product offering, and want to highlight that I have logged in. We are a cloud-based offering, meaning you're going to be able to access BlackLine anywhere that you have an internet connection. So it could be there in the office, or if you happen to be working remotely or traveling for business, you can log in at any particular point in time and complete your activities within the system. So now, what I've done is I started out in one of our higher level roles that organizations quite often have. It's the role of CFO, and it's a role that, let's say, CFOs have, controllers have, and it's one that provides you with an entity-based view in where your org is. So you know right away, you see where your team is from an account reconciliation point of view. As the team is completing those account recs, they may find reconciling line items that are going to result in a required adjustment. Some of those adjustments may result in either a favorable or unfavorable hit to the P&L. You'll have that info. You can see where recs are, what's past due by person, by entity, and you can dive on into those. And down at the bottom, we see where we are from a task certification status, meaning what items on our closed checklist have and have not been completed. Now, all of the dashboards that you see here are fully interactive. You hover above these and you can see, all right, how many reconciliations, those of which have been deemed non-key, have not been prepared? How many non-key have been prepared? And just the differentiation as an FYI between key and non-key, that just really drives the preparation and approval due dates, okay? Now, if you want to see those 23 account recs, click that metric and you see those down below. Now, alternatively, you may elect to use the navigation window up above. If you want to view, for example, all of your account recs, you certainly could. Now, when we come in here, we see a very similar view what we saw a moment ago. This is our Atlas grid. You see those reconciliations here that have not been prepared, what's been prepared, what might have even been rejected. And you see the GL account number there to the right, description of the account, the general ledger balance, and that will be fed in from your ERP based on the frequency that you determine. If you want that to feed overnight throughout the month, that's great. And as you enter close, if you want that feed frequency to increase such that those GL balances are populated every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's up to you so that the team is not having to wait around to reconcile their accounts. To the right of that GL balance, you see the unidentified difference. And that really just is a difference between the sum of the current reconciling line items, should there be any, compared to that GL balance. Now, BlackLine is a period-based offering, so you get that big win when you go live because everything's available here in the cloud. And as you accumulate history, it's going to prove to be beneficial to a couple of individuals, new hires. They want to toggle back to a prior period to see how an account was reconciled, they certainly could. As you accumulate history and as you're subject to audit, you can provide access to your auditors and they can pull reconciliations, say, from a prior year end, prior period. That's because within the offering, we have a number of different roles or hats that users can wear that provides them with the access that they need. So if you provide access, say, to either internal or external audit, you certainly could, and you control everything that they see and do. Now, one thing to take note of is that a user can wear many hats, but at all times, duties will be properly segregated. So if someone happens to be a preparer of an account reconciliation, the system will require a unique approver with the appropriate authority to approve that rec. So now what we're going to do is we're going to transition over from the entity-based role that we're in at the present time, that of a CFO, over to one that's assignment-based, so a preparer. That quite often is the role that an accountant would have, and when they log in, they see what they need to do at any given time, right? So they see the accounts that they're responsible for reconciling here, those of which some of them might in fact be past due. They have information that we saw a moment ago on their required adjustments, also related to tasks. What do they need to prepare? What is past due? So let's focus in on our first dashboard here up above and talk about the reconciliation process. As I mentioned, your trial balance will be coming in based on that feed frequency you desire. And as that occurs, you're going to see as an accountant those reconciliations that have not been prepared. So what do we need to work on? As we work on those, they're going to start to travel through your workflow, landing in this prepared bucket and then going through the review and approval process. Now, we also have the ability within the BlackLine system to automate the preparation of some of your account reconciliations. And we do that through the enablement of what we call auto certification rules. And you see those here on the screen. Now, there's a whole listing of them, but I want to call out some of the key rules that are enabled at go live or a couple months after go live. Quite often we see organizations enable the all balance is zero, no activity auto certification rule. Likewise, zero balance account auto certification rule. No balance change, no activity auto certification rule for accounts like equity. Now, what happens is rather than take a prior period rec where there's been no movement, no balance change, and one is just simply signing off on it, changing the date, and then somebody's spending time on reviewing that. If you enable the rule, the system will do that for you. And then should the rule condition no longer be valid, it's going to automatically decertify that reconciliation and send an alert email to the preparer, letting them know that that rule condition was no longer valid for the period. So again, helps you become more efficient. Now, that also serves as a preventative and detective measure, right? So if you've had an account that has historically been dormant, having no balance, no activity, and all of a sudden an accountant records an erroneous entry to that account, perhaps, you're able to find that much earlier in your process rather than discovering it when you're starting to perform your different fluctuation analyses of the balance sheet at the end of the month. And it really is up to you in the adoption of the approach of these that you'd like to employ. Now, with that, we do see organizations auto-certify anywhere between 20 to upwards of 85% of their account reconciliation. So we know that those are being highly leveraged out there in the BlackLine ecospace. What we'll do is we're going to dive into some of the reconciliations that have not been prepared here to date. I could simply click on this metric here, or again, use the quick links up above. It's really entirely up to the user in terms of the approach that they would like to take. So we see a listing of all of our reconciliations here again. Those that have not been prepared, those that have been prepared. We see a listing of all of our GL accounts again. As we scroll down this list, we're seeing our entire pool of reconciliations we're responsible for. As we continue down, you see some text now start to appear in this column. Those are for grouped account reconciliations where, take for example, an account like PP&E, if you want to reconcile to the net book value, you'd want to group both the cost and accumulated depreciation and reconcile them as one. You certainly can do that. What we're going to do here is we're going to focus in on some recs that have not been prepared here to date. I could filter those out and focus in solely on those not prepared recs. I can save a view such that every time I land in, I can toggle quickly over to a view of the recs that I need to action. It's really up to the user and their preference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to the offering using a fairly simple account reconciliation here that organizations quite often build using Excel-based worksheets. Take, for example, a prepaid account reconciliation. If we were to navigate on into either that account or really any within the offering, the look and feel is going to start to feel very similar. Now, within this account reconciliation, we see our entity information here up above, our GL account number and all the other account segment information, the description of the account, and two things to keep in mind here in our demo environment. One, we're in a quarter end period, and two, we did go live during a prior month, which is why you already see reconciling line items present. Now, when you initially go live, you'll have the ability to have those line items, which are existing, imported so you're not having to key that information in manually. Now, you certainly could do so if you desire using this hyperlink over here to the right. Now, at minimum, in this type of account rec, we would need our start date, end date description in the original transaction amount. And other types of reconciliations, take for example an accrual account, you need to know when did that accrual originate. You need a description of it. You need the amount. So very similar to this. Now, we see the amount that remains to be amortized here for these four assets summing to a little over 63,000. Now, if we come down and we see our GL balance, and again, that's coming in from your ERP based on the feed frequency you desire. And if you hover above it, you can see when that was last populated. And we're going to use that in conjunction with the above to generate that unidentified difference. And take note that because it exists, if we come down a little bit, we'll come back to this section momentarily, notice that I don't even have the ability to certify or submit the account reconciliation for review until that difference is resolved. Okay? You have the ability also to have an accountant certify an account reconciliation if they bring that difference down to within the de minimis threshold if you desire. Some organizations adopt that approach for lower risk accounts, whereas others say, you know what, we're going to reconcile down to the penny on all account recs. It's really up to you. If we come back up above, let's go through the asset addition process here. As I mentioned, those can be imported or we can add them manually. I'll go ahead and add them manually so that you can see the other fields that are available to you throughout the import process as well as the manual addition process. So we talked about adding the original assets and the amount of the transaction that they occurred in here. We need to capture that. We need to capture the amortization duration of these assets. So we're going to note that they are stated or are required to be amortized from 7/1 to a period of 6/30/2020. And what BlackLine is going to do is use these inputs to build that amortization table for you. And then if you elect to pursue the journal entry functionality, perhaps at a later date, we can even record that automatically in your ledger for you. Now, here's some additional fields that you can use to capture additional information. So you can bring in perhaps a reference number, the prepaid invoice number. Maybe you want to note the offsetting account number where that amortization expense is to be recorded. You certainly can do that, and that can be imported as well. We do need to note a description of the asset. We can say we prepaid some 2019, 2020 taxes. Now, down below, you can capture additional information related to this asset. Maybe you want to attach a copy of the invoice that was prepaid. You certainly could. You can do that by selecting this Add Document hyperlink. Once you do, you'll be prompted to go out and browse for your supporting documentation, which you certainly could do. Or if you happen to have an Explorer window open, you can drag your supporting documentation on into that window there, and you'll see all of your supporting documents, whether it be one or many, added and attached in the original file format that they've been selected in, and we can see that appear here down below. Once we save this, we'll then see the new asset appear on the face of our reconciliation here at the top. Now, we assume that this was bona fide prepaid activity, one asset. Now, if that $5,000 happened to be comprised of, let's say, multiple erroneous entries recorded to the account that needed to be reclassed to another area, either within the balance sheet or the P&L, you would have come in here and have added a supporting line item and noted the amount of that adjustment that was required. Now, our unidentified difference has been resolved, so we can deem this reconciliation complete. Before we do that, we may want to add additional comments, documents, or hyperlinks. You certainly have the ability to do that. You can add comments which are permanent or temporary in nature. You can even add comments which will then email out to a user of BlackLine and inform them of a certain situation that has occurred. And we see that occurring here. So we're emailing a user and telling them to forward some tax documentation over to legal. So you have the ability to communicate out to other users within the product using our user mention functionality that you see there. Now, as we come down, this is a section that I minimized a moment ago. This is optional, but we do see it leveraged from a best practice standpoint because organizations want to provide additional auditable evidence that demonstrate that their accountants have performed certain procedures related to the reconciliation process. Again, purely optional. You can have as many statements as you desire containing whatever verbiage you want. Those statements that you see that the preparer has, they can be unique to even an approver. They can have their own unique series of statements as well too. So as the reconciliation is going through your workflow, the approvers, whether it be one or many, can attest to certain steps that they performed. Now, to complete the account rec, we press certify right here. And that would then sign the reconciliation off and have it routed through a workflow so it is then traveling through that predefined workflow so it's being sent to the given approver. Now, let's navigate on into a reconciliation that's leveraging transaction matching. Okay, so once we go into this reconciliation, one thing that you're going to notice is that the look and feel feels very similar. Okay, so we've navigated from a reconciliation that was leveraging our amortizable prepaid template over to one that is using our bank account template. Again, the look and feel is going to be very similar in BlackLine because the use of our templates helps greatly mitigate the risk, oftentimes associated with an Excel-based environment. What I'll do is I'll bring here up on the screen a listing of those that you can leverage. So we started out in our amortizable prepaid template a moment ago. We're now in our bank account template. But we have other templates that are designed to meet your other various accounting needs, whether it be for accruals or if you just want to have a simple general listing of reconciling line items, you could. Now, you may have a reconciliation that you have now where you say, you know what, it's extremely complex. I need to actually layer that reconciliation on into BlackLine, still being in Excel. You can do that using our integrated spreadsheets template here. Now, we are in a reconciliation now, our bank rec that is utilizing transaction matching. So we're going to take a look at the scenario that you see here. Matching can be used for a whole host of use cases that you see here on the screen as well. From accruals, you may want to bring in all of the GL activity and have BlackLine match up the accrual with the subsequent reversal, and then leaving left over those accrued line items which substantiate that GL balance at the end of the period. Now, with matching, what we do is we have you bring in your sources of data. That information can be brought in either manually or it can be automated. The information can flow in a number of different file format types. So when it's brought in, it's going to flow through the matching engine, which will highlight those transactions that match and those that do not match. You'll have the opportunity to go through those and manually match them off or use them to create your reconciling line items. If you're leveraging the journal entry functionality, that process can be automated if you need to create an entry in the ledger, or you can do that even manually. And you will see that occur within this associated match set here. Now, this match set is comprised of many what we call pass rules that compare multiple sources of data against one another to find those transactions that match and those that do not match. Now, a reconciliation can have more than one match set, and beneath each match set, you can use it to compare up to 3 sources of data per match set. So again, you can have more than one with up to 3 per set. Now, you'll have the ability to view the transactions that matched automatically, right? These are where your degree of confidence is highest. You may not need to look at those because you're quite confident that the system matched a single transaction to 17 transactions in the opposing data source that tie to one another. You can view the details of them if you desire by selecting the transaction identifier. So here we see the single transaction that was matched from the bank to those 17 transactions that were matched against the ledger that corresponded or correlated to that item there. You may want to view your suggested matches. So within BlackLine, you have the ability to stratify your matches between those that are automatic, where your degree of confidence is highest, to those that are suggested, where you may say, you know what, they may be related, but I need to review those. And you can review those and see those beneath this suggested option. You may find that some have resulted in either a material or immaterial variance, and you need to investigate those. If you find that they're not related, simply select that identifier there, and you have the ability then to unmatch them and resubject them to the series of pass rules that are going to compare them against the other information that has come in because they may perhaps yield a better quality match. Now, we see our bank balance has been brought in for us in this particular type of reconciliation. That can be fed in automatically. We see we have a section for some reconciling line items pertaining to the bank reconciliation process. We see that there. As we come down, again, our unidentified difference is present, and because that exists, we cannot certify this reconciliation. So what that tells me is that I need to go into my unmatched transactions to see if those that did not match off are transactions that represent that unidentified difference down below. And to do that, I select this magnifying glass. Once we arrive into our series of unmatched transactions, we'll see the transactions that did not match from one data source and as well as the other. When we come in here, we may find transactions that probably should have matched off against one another, and we can manually match them if we need to. Now, the reason these transactions didn't match is because beneath our series of pass rules, beneath the match set, they didn't have a rule that was set up to match 5 days out from the other transaction. We can do that. We can match based on plus or minus X number of days. Same thing on amount. If you have an account that has an amount, let's say AR, you invoice somebody $5,000, but somebody remits payment for $4,999. Maybe you want to match off based on plus or minus $1, $5, $10. That's up to you. So we can build that logic in here to help yield better quality matches. Now, absent creating a new rule, we would just simply come in and select the two and manually match them off, and they would now be removed. Now, we're left with some outstanding transactions from the data source at the bank. We see that they're bank fees. We can automate the recording of those entries in your ledger if you desire. But if we're not leveraging that and we've arrived at the end of the period, we need to create our reconciling line items for those bank fees that are amounting to $205 here. To do that, we would action them up above by creating a reconciling line item. We wouldn't match them off because once we record that entry in the ledger, that's going to occur automatically. So after having selected them, we're going to create an item. And when we create this item, we want it to appear beneath that bank item section that I mentioned a moment ago. We can have them listed out as single reconciling line items on the face of the rec, or we can summarize them and give them a description, but we'll always have the ability to drill in and see those transactions that make up that $205 total. So I'll create a reconciling line item. And this $205 is in fact a required adjustment because the GL balance is not correct for the period. Thus, we need to record an entry in the ledger that's going to result in an unfavorable hit to the P&L. Now, you'll ultimately have the ability to determine what is displayed in this drop-down field here. A lot of organizations use this to run reports to pull their potential exposure out there in the ledger. And this is something that we saw in one of our dashboards when we kicked off the call. So this is going to result in an unfavorable hit to the P&L for these June bank fees that appeared at the end of the month. Now, you have the ability to attach additional support like we did with that other reconciling line item a moment ago. Now, because we've chosen a required adjustment, we are presented with an optional section that you may employ where you can actually assign this adjustment out to an accountant to ensure that they actually record the entry in the ledger. Purely optional is the use of this section. And here's how we add support below, very similar to that prepaid example a moment ago. Now, when we come up and we save this, we're going to see the new reconciling line item appear on the face of the account rec if we toggle back. Now, so we see our bank fees item subtype here, and if I was to select that, I will see the June bank fees that appeared at the end of the month in the amount of $205. And as I mentioned, you can drill in and view the transaction level detail if you desire. Right? So that would be how we see a summary line item. And if we had single items, we would see them appear on the face, but we could certainly nest them beneath an item subtype if desired. And take note, because we've added that reconciling line item, we've resolved that unidentified difference, we can now deem this reconciliation complete. So we need to sign off on those steps that we performed in the process of completing this account rec. Absent leveraging that, we'd simply press certify, and that is how we again sign off on another reconciliation. So it is that easy. Now, what we'll do is we're going to change course a little bit. We're going to talk about our tasks offering. Now, quite often, a lot of organizations have their closed tasks memorialized in an Excel-based checklist. A couple things happen with that. One, you may have accountants on the team who add line items to it, shift the columns around, tasks may get deleted. You may have to manually roll forward that task list every period. That all is going to happen automatically within BlackLine, except the deletion there. So they're going to roll forward every period automatically, and you're going to see what you need to complete from day minus X all the way on through day plus X. And there does exist control over the addition and closure of these tasks that you see here. And the great thing is that using one of those managerial entity-based roles, you have the ability to see what tasks are outstanding. So you're not having to walk around and ask the various accountants where they are in their steps of the close process. You have that immediate visibility. Now, we see the tasks and their statuses over here on the left. We see that certain tasks might have a dependency hierarchy. That means that you can link a task to yet another task, or you can link a task to an account rec. Take, for example, somebody in your accounting department who's waiting to close the ledger. They may not be able to do that until they've confirmed that the 5 members of the accounting team, or 10 or 20, have confirmed that they've recorded all their entries for the period. So what you can do is link the closing of the ledger to all of the individual tasks that the team needs to perform or sign off on, confirming that they've completed the recording of all of their entries for the period. So you can create that dependency structure, and you can even have BlackLine email you once everyone's done, so you know you can close then the ledger. Now, tasks can have a unique hierarchy. You could set that up however you desire. If you want to have it based on entity, point of contact, functional area, accounting process area, you certainly could, and you can have a multi-tiered hierarchy if you desire. Here we see a description of the task. So what does the accountant need to do at a high level? When does it need to be performed? Again, on what close day? What date of the month does that correlate to? So let's face it, sometimes you may have to work on what is deemed a holiday. You can have your calendar reflect that work day, which in essence would be a company holiday, and make it unique to your organization. Now, to sign off on a task, we can have that occur automatically beneath these dependencies where we create that relationship. We can sign off on tasks in bulk. So let's say an accountant wants to sign off on all their day 3 items at once, they certainly could. Now, some organizations exempt certain tasks from bulk certification, or they disable it altogether. The reason being is because they want to force the accountants to come in and to sign off on a task, press edit, and then they would scroll to the bottom and press certify. So the reason they exempt certain tasks is because they want them to view the task purpose and instructions, as well as potentially review or add any additional supporting documentation to the task to demonstrate that they've performed that activity. Now, down below, we see we have a series of optional certification statements that we can leverage to provide, again, additional auditable evidence demonstrating steps you performed in the completion of this task, purely optional. Once we complete this, we press certify, and that is how we sign off or basically mark off a step that we completed. And here, for example, is a way that you can then email somebody to let them know that you're done. So you can say, hey, I'm done. And we can send an email to let that individual know maybe they might be waiting on this to be completed. So that is how easy that you can use this tasks offering. And it is a product that you can stand up pretty quickly, because quite often you may have a lot of this information memorialized in an Excel-based checklist that can be copied over to a data import template. And then you would sign those tasks out to a user that's been created within BlackLine, and you're pretty much ready to go. Okay, so we've talked about the account reconciliation area here. Coupled within that, we did touch upon at a high level transaction matching. We looked at our tasks and talked about how those can be certified and completed, and how they would then travel through the workflow if one is needed. One thing that we have within BlackLine that we haven't really touched upon is very robust reporting. All users have access to reporting. So if I was to hop here, for example, back to the role of CFO, because I have visibility into all of my entities within my organization, you may want to take a look at reporting. Just want to highlight real fast here that out of the box, BlackLine does have a lot of great canned reports that you can leverage to provide you with information on your open reconciling line items. If you're tracking those manually, you'll no longer need to do that. Likewise, your required adjustments. All right, so what reconciling line items exist out there that are going to result in either a favorable or unfavorable hit to the P&L, or what are those that are balance sheet reclass in nature, right? You can have information perhaps for auditors on when something was certified, right? So did our team sign off on those tasks or complete their reconciliations timely? So a lot of great canned reports that you can use here, and you can run them as they are, schedule them to run, or create new reports altogether, or you can copy existing reports and then modify them to better meet your needs. Now, if you elect to modify them, your administrator can do that and they can share them with everybody so that one is not having to spend time creating a report that their peer in the accounting department is also wanting. The admin in your team can do that for you. But if you ever did need to modify a report, once you've copied it, you could come in and you could easily edit it. And they're easily editable because as you start to modify the reports, you actually see what the preview of the report is going to look like, because our reporting engine allows you to see that using a small preview of your real life transactional detail. Now notice that's a lot of reports, as we see here, have a visual component. You're able to modify that as well. Now to modify a report, it's very easy to do. You can create pivot tables, you can group, you can sort, and you can add and remove fields. So if you wanted to group your open reconciling line items by entity, you can come over here and you could even search for entity and select that field and bring it on in if you desire. Or if it's a field already in your report, just drag and drop. So if you wanted to group by entity, you could easily do that. If you wanted to group by, GL account, you could do that. You start to see that new stratification appear over here. So here we see our open reconciling line items, and here's some pertaining to that bank reconciliation that we performed a moment ago. There are those June bank fees that are going to result in an unfavorable hit to the P&L. I could even add in here filters that hone in solely on P&L impact items. You'll have the ability to do that. Once you get this report in a state you like, don't forget that visual component, because you have the ability to create additional groupings there as well. Maybe you want to group by account. Maybe you want to group by reference and see how they're structured by entity by reference. That is going to be entirely up to you. Once you get this in a state that you like, you can save it and kick it off or schedule that report to run on a frequency that you determine. And you can view them here in the product in a PDF, Excel, or CSV format. So that's how easy it is to leverage reporting. Now, a couple resources available to you within BlackLine that will help you better utilize the offering. You'll have access to great product documentation. You'll have access to a BlackLine community. Again, that is where you can go interact with over 200,000 users of BlackLine. You can leverage the BlackLine U and take training at your leisure. Great thing to embed in one's goals and objectives for the year, because you can be educated on the product from the role of a preparer all the way on through a system administrator for all the product areas. So very easy to use. We have a lot of great resources for you to take advantage of. So again, want to thank everyone for their time. And what I'll do now is I will pass the ball back to Chantel, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through some Q&A here and field those questions that have come in through the chat.
Great, thank you, Chris. Like Chris said, we're going to go ahead and take some questions now. Just a reminder that if you haven't submitted your questions yet, to please go ahead and type your questions into the question box in your control panel. The first question that we have, Chris, is can the rollout of BlackLine be phased?
Yes, it can. So you can certainly phase your role at a BlackLine, meaning if you're a global organization, and let's say you have a presence in Bermuda, Canada, the United States, Asia Pac, and you say, hey, I want to go live with Asia Pac first. You could, and then at a later date, expand the offering to those other geographies so you can phase it. You can also phase it from a product standpoint. So if you want to first start out with the account reconciliations and task management offering, go live with those, and then at a later date, layer on transaction matching. So you can phase it not only from a geographical presence, you can phase it from a product standpoint as well.
Great,
Great
thank
question.
you. Second question, can you change the template that is being used on a reconciliation once it is in use?
The answer is yes, you can. Now, you can place controls over that. You can empower the accountants to change them, or certain organizations have it structured such that only the administrator can do that. I'll give you an example. Now, sometimes some organizations, we talked about phasing a moment ago, when they go live with BlackLine, they may even want to become comfortable with the workflow, the look and feel of the offering. So they may start out, say, in a general list template. They may have just a single line item where they attach their Excel-based account rec. Now, we want them to realize the automation that can occur within BlackLine. So what they do is, for the first period, leverage that general list template. And then in that second period, what they do is, let's take, for example, a prepaid account. They may have attached their Excel-based rec. They will then change that to be the amortizable prepaid template and then load all of their prepaid line items in there so that they're pulling and leveraging the automation capabilities within BlackLine. So the answer is yes, you can change the template after the initial setting of that template.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we have you went through the bank reconciliation process and demonstrated how it leverages transaction matching. How common are the other use cases you showed?
That's good. So bank rec is one of the most common scenarios, but it is common to leverage matching for other scenarios. So I had a slide where we highlighted some of the other use cases. I briefly mentioned the accrual line item or process area. That was one of the first items mentioned on the slide. Another great use case that I often see is intercompany. A lot of organizations, especially take for example, if you acquire another organization, they're on a different ERP than what your primary ERP is. Even if you find you're having mismatches, bring in the GL details of the primary ERP in that acquired entity, and you can use the matching engine to match off those transactions that are related. Perhaps one intercompany partner recorded a transaction, so one invoice, and the other recorded multiple transactions that then tie to that one amount. Maybe you can use it to even find currency or FX differences. So matching can be used for a whole host of other scenarios, and it is actually quite common.
Great. Next question. As it relates to transaction matching, what is the volume of transactions that your matching engine can handle, and how long does it take to match transactions?
Yep. So in our example, we had 47,000 transactions that were matched. Now, we can handle millions of transactions in a matter of seconds to a minute or two within BlackLine. And so that data, if you're bringing in, 5 million transactions, 10 million, 20 million, we'll be able to handle that. Those transactions will then flow through those series of pass rolls, and the accountant will then see those that matched and those that did not match. So we can handle from, as we saw, 47,000 or even less, up to millions of transactions in a matter of a minute. So not going to be a problem.
Perfect. Okay, last question today is, can you help us understand the implementation effort and resources, including training, that are available?
Yep. So we looked real briefly at the training option. That was the BlackLine U option that I highlighted. You can even have additional premium options where you can have instructor-led training. So that's something that is possible above and beyond what we saw. But touching upon the implementation effort, it's actually, if you look at the core products, so account reconciliations and tasks, those are the easiest to get up and running, right? So from an implementation standpoint, all that needs to be done is an extract needs to be built within the general ledger to pull required information out. And we have a detailed template that lays out the structure of that extract. And it can be transmitted via a number of different means or vehicles. So common secure file transfer is oftentimes leveraged by some organizations. And we do have connectors at BlackLine for some ERPs, and we'd have to explore that further with an in-depth conversation with you all. Now, once that general ledger information is transmitted, so we're talking about balances, the account reconciliation offering can then be leveraged. If you're looking for to leverage the transaction matching offering, we would need to work with you to bring in the sources of information that you need to use for purposes of matching. Okay, and sometimes that information can be easily obtained from within the organization, but Let's say if it's a bank that you're working with, there may be a bottleneck on their end to pull it, but it again is a product that we can get up and running rather quickly. And so if you're interested in the other offerings, take for examples, let's say journals. That's one that we would have to assess or look at what is required from your ERP standpoint from a journal entries capability, and we'd build that into the offering for you. So the implementation effort, it does vary based on the core versus the advanced products, but we'll be able to meet your needs in all those different areas and provide you with the training so that you can get the most out of BlackLine so that you truly do realize the automation capabilities that exist.
Okay, great. And there's one more question that just came in. Does the matching process continue to learn trends in transactions?
That's a that is an excellent question. So as it stands now, the matching engine relies on past rules that have been built to replicate the process that's currently being performed by a member of the accounting team. It is on our roadmap and should be beta in the coming months. Um, an intelligent offering where it will learn or provide you with proposed matches absent having past roles. And so that's something that is going to be coming down the road.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. It looks like we've covered all the questions. I just wanted to point out to everybody, in case you didn't notice, that we've made a BlackLine data sheet available for you to download in the handout section in the control panel. So if you'd like to discuss your company's requirements in a bit more detail to see if BlackLine would be a good fit for your organization, we've also put up on the screen now contact details for either myself or for Rob, so that you please feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to assist you with that. Also, if you think that others in your organization would get value from this webinar, a recorded version will be available and sent to you, so please feel free to share it with your colleagues. And finally, a survey is going to pop up on your screen when you close the webinar today, so please take a few seconds to answer the survey. You'll also notice that we're going to ask you a question on whether or not you want. So there's some additional handouts that we can send to you, additional brochures on BlackLine if you'd like to receive those. So just indicate that on your survey as well. And as always, your feedback is extremely helpful in making sure that we're delivering content that you want to hear about. So thank you very much for providing that. So once again, thank you, Chris, for your time today. It was a great presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.